Hi, it's Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, and welcome to Career Coach Office Hours. I spend time twice a week talking with you about, answering questions, I should say, related to job search, hiring more effectively, management, leadership, dealing with workplace related issues. And if you have a question for me before the show, it can be emailed to me at thebiggamehunter@gmail.com. And in the subject line, put the phrase office hours. This way I know what it was about. A lot of people messaged me since the Friday show. Tuesdays at 9:15, Fridays at 9 a.m., both Eastern time. I take questions about these subjects. And during the show, if you have a question for me, you can just put it into chat and I'll try and respond to it during the show. And if you're watching on LinkedIn, hello, gang. Good to see you. And I appreciate you joining me. Same thing with Facebook, because I have a Facebook Live going on the Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter page there, as well as on my YouTube channel at JobSearchTV.com. So without further ado, I love that phrase, further ado. Let me start off with a couple of questions. I'll circle back to check to see if there's anything in chat. This is a questions. All these questions are ones that were messaged to me. I have Crohn's and have wondered if it would be a disservice to check, and it's a disability box, or if it could help set me apart if I talked about it in my cover letter and how it was helping me overcome adversity. They wanted my thoughts about this because they're having a rough time getting interviews. I don't know your skill set, which is a factor here. You may have great skills and not interviewing well. So I don't want to have this remain as a Crohn's issue entirely because, again, I don't know the work that you do, and I also don't know how you interview. What I'm seeing here is, your comment about checking the disability box. And I'm wondering, people are going to discriminate. And we can pretend it doesn't exist, but it does. And checking the box, I think, does serve you. Why? Because some organizations are going to advantage people who have disabilities. So consider that as a possibility. At the time of the first interview, they'll go into it with you just to understand what sort of reasonable accommodations are going to be necessary from their standpoint. Remember, that's the requirement under the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. You can request reasonable accommodation from an employer. They'll want to understand what those are. So they may follow up to ask questions about the nature of the illness. But I think you're doing yourself a disservice to check it, or to not check it, I should say. And in terms of your cover letter, I would focus, first of all, on the skill set and how it matches up with the job requirement. Instead of ending in the third paragraph, like I normally tell people to do, I would add another paragraph preceding the final one that says, as someone who has lived with Crohn's, what it's done for me is, and you talk about, as you wrote here, the necessity to have strong character, persevere in the face of adversity, not feel overwhelmed, but to learn how to focus mental energy to deal with situations real time. Something along those lines, I think, does also serve you. So don't be afraid to check the box, because here's the issue that you might have. and someone just messaged me. I'll come back to that later. Um, with regard to uh, not checking the box, not acknowledging the disability and getting hired, and then circling back to it might hurt you with your manager since they had no idea what you might need. The way it hurts is, I'll just use an example based upon TV commercials I see for people who have Crohn's. Um, so the first thing is uh, acknowledge it, because if you don't, it can have an adverse impact upon you when you join. So, a fairly detailed answer, I should say. I hope this is helpful to you. Let me just jump over to chat. Tips for video interviews. Broad category. Let me do a couple of points. Number one, what you wear and your backdrop. You want to pop on camera. Now, my lighting isn't great today for some reason. I sit in front of a window, so the window points at me. You want to have light on your face so you're visible, and what you wear should allow you to pop on camera. Make sure you're in the right eye contact with your camera, because usually when I meet people, so often their eye contact is next to non-existent. So set yourself up with speaker view so that you're able to make eye contact with the camera. Lay your camera in a way that it's at the right height. So you don't have to stare at it. As I'm doing now, I'm looking at myself. I'm not looking at the camera. This requires that you get online, which you can do with Zoom on a free account, so you can see what you're like. I use a microphone. I believe the microphone on my laptop is actually pretty good, and most people's aren't. So record yourself. Are you happy with the sound? Play it back. If you're not happy with the audio, you got to change that. Your backdrop should allow you to stand out based upon what you wear. Nothing particularly distracting. Let's just keep it focused on, allowing you to make eye contact, pop on camera, greet people with a smile. If you have the dour look on your face, you're making the conversation serious, and as such, they don't really get a sense of your personality. Don't be afraid to have the twinkle in your eyes and the smile on your face, because when you're on camera, you're a performer. That's what's going on for you. By the way, Vinny, thank you very much for that kind comment. If I could send a connection request to you, if you were not already connected, and you'd write a recommendation for me, I'd really appreciate it. And that's no pressure, okay? Continuing on. Other things related to video interviews. You've got a job description. You want to make a couple of points in particular. Use Post-it notes. Post-it on, I'm going to illustrate the difference. Here's my camera, right? But if I put a Post-it note to the right and my finger is to the right of the camera, people can't notice that I'm taking a quick peek over at the Post-it. So that, same thing on the left side. You can't put it along the frame, because when you look at the frame, you're breaking eye contact. But on the top, on the either side of the camera, that works for you if you need reminders. Remember, you're an actor. You're a performer. You're trying to connect with your audience. And in doing so, put on a performance that allows you to connect one human being to another. So right now, I'm talking to myself, and I'm not talking to a person on screen. When you talk to a person on screen, when you're listening, you can seem intent, and you can smile at times, and be encouraging, be the friendly person. Those are a couple of points related to video interviews I think you'll find helpful. Let's go to the next question, because I got a whole bunch more. My resume makes me look like a job hopper. I've had a lot of different positions over the last 4 years. no fault of mine. I've worked for startups, moved, had health issues, and a bunch of other stuff. And I'm wondering how to approach this appropriately in interviews so employers don't see me that way. So, in dealing with it in interviews, I would volunteer things at certain points. I wouldn't start off by saying, I know my resume makes me look like a job hopper, but there have been real reasons for it. You can wait for them to ask that kind of a question before addressing it. But I think you can do it more simply, that as you talk about organizations you've worked for, you can say, COVID was rough for this firm. They closed up through 3 months into lockdown. I was able to find the remote position and was able to work for them for about 7 months before they too experienced difficulties and laid me off and 14 other people. And thus, what you're able to do is to address it in the course of you talking about work for a particular firm. It's not just what you say that matters, it's how you say it. And the degree to which you come across as being sincere is really important to you. So remember, sincerity matters. It's part of the acting job that you have to do on your interviews so that they feel connected to you and believe you. Because more than your skills, a firm wants to trust you. No trust, no hire. That's the fact of it. So you have to come across as being honest, earnest, sincere, whatever words you want to use. That's how you have to communicate it so that they believe you. No belief, no hire, regardless of how good you are, because there's always going to be someone else with comparable, identical, similar skills who they're not worried about. So one way you can do that is lower your voice, slow your speech down a little bit as you talk. This helps them connect with you and feel as though you're believable. So that's the next question. And for those of you who are watching, if you've got a question for me, you can put it into chat. I'd be happy to answer it for you on the show. And I've got a lot to get to tonight. I am going to do a show on Friday. Don't know how many questions I'll be getting, but I'm going to do a show at 9 a.m. Friday. Just want to make mention of that here. When employers are asking you why you're on the job market, oh yeah, I remember reading this one. Is it okay to say that the role you're currently in wasn't one you were hired for because of COVID and not presented to you in the correct way, and therefore you want to do something much more aligned with your skill set and or what you thought you'd be doing? Or should the focus be on wanting a new challenge, growth, etc.? I think we can simplify that one too. And the way to simplify it is to say something along the lines of, because I'm a believer that fewer words are better. Fewer words are more powerful. And thus, you can answer the question by saying something to the effect of, by the way, I am answering your questions. I've done the first two already. I'm on the third. So you can say something along the lines of, I joined this firm and I had an expectation I'd be doing such and such. And, COVID was what it was. Firms became desperate and they started to scramble to survive. And, everyone had to adapt to what the situation is. Now as things are, they're ramping up, but think of it in terms of talking about it during COVID times and peak COVID times. Now that things are winding down, you might just simply pause and say to them, I want to do the kind of work that I thought I was hired to do and where my skill set is, and thus focus on the kind of work you want to do. Another way, since we're in the middle of a COVID outbreak, is to talk about, the only reason I'm looking is to find something more in line with my skill set. I was hired to do such and such, and this firm responded by changing my role, changing my responsibilities, things along those lines, so that they could survive. Makes perfect sense to me, but we're in a situation now where we all have to tough it out, and this is going to probably go on for a while. And I don't want to do the wrong kind of work forever. I want to do the right kind of work with another firm of good quality, like the one I'm in now, but doing the right kind of work that will use my skills. So that might be a way that you answer it during another outbreak of COVID. And yes, do rewatch. It will give you a hand because I did cover the 3 questions. Next one. Oh, someone asked me my opinion on this statement. Job interviews are like flipping a coin. What do I make of this statement? I make of this statement that someone doesn't know how to interview, and thus they've been rejected a bunch of times. So they want to feel better about themselves, so they're making it seem like interviewing is arbitrary, when most of interviewing isn't. Now, there's a point where a firm decides, I've got 3 people I have to choose between, and I don't want to even make it seem like that's like flipping a coin, because they've narrowed it down to 3 from, let's say, 10 or 15 or 30. And now, what are the differences between the 3? That's not about flipping a coin. That's about discrete differences. So I really don't buy this interviews are like flipping a coin nonsense. I believe that is nonsense and is just a way to rationalize why someone doesn't do well on interviews. These days, good, a hiring question. These days, using CVs and 1 to 2 hours of interviews are not enough to find the right candidate. How can you improve the quality of your hiring? By improving the quality of your interviewing. You don't know how to interview. If you're not getting quality people, given all of that, there's something wrong. And it's not about them. It's more about you and how you evaluate and assess. Because what you're telling me in this is, you want to find the right candidate. Maybe you've hired the wrong people in the past, and now you're in a situation where you have a staff that you're not happy with. What do you do? And the answer is, well, let me give you statistics. 80%, I'm sorry, more than 60% of hiring managers have buyer's remorse within 18 months of bringing someone on board. I know a lot have buyer's remorse very quickly. Now, remember, job hunters are on good behavior when they interview. So they're trying to put on a happy face. They're trying to put on a good performance for you. They want to demonstrate their skills so you want to buy them. Conversely, I know you are too. So one of the things I used to do when I did recruiting is I told the people I was representing all the bad stuff about the situation I would want to screen them for. I would talk with them about, for example, they were going to go to a consulting firm that would expect 80% travel. I didn't hide that from them. I led with them with that. I made sure that they understood this was a road warrior role. They'd be on a plane Monday, home Friday afternoon, home Thursday night, late, work from home on Friday. And if that was a problem, let's just shake hands, part as friends, and move on. You need to do your version of that too. Tell them about all the difficulties in the role and not just paint a happy smile button face on it or lipstick on a pig. That's another way of describing it. And thus have people who join and find out very quickly that they were misled. Again, that's on you. In terms of screening, in these 1 to 2 hours of interviews, maybe you're having a couple of other people participate in the process. Sit in and see how they're evaluating people. Give them a script if you need to about the things you want them to cover in the interviews, so They're not making arbitrary decisions. I don't really like this person. What don't you like about them? I don't know. I just wasn't comfortable with them. That's about your employee. It's not about the candidate. They're giving you fuzzy answers because they don't really know what to focus in on. So they're dealing with stuff that's going to distract them. Direct them as to what you want them to cover and how you want them to evaluate and assess. It's really that simple. Tighten it up, sit in. If it's being done over Zoom, you can be on the interview. Um, you can black out your screen so you can multitask. Take down notes, be helpful to the interviewer, teach them, because most people learn through trial and error and they don't know how to interview, and that includes you. So get better in interviewing so you don't make hiring mistakes. Let me just check chat for a moment. Bear with me for a second. Let's see now. Okay, no, nothing new. Let me come back. Next question. How do I email the recruiter? I attended an interview starting the beginning of last week and got selected, but I couldn't take their calls or respond to the email because my grandmother passed away last week and I got busier with the funeral. So how do you get in touch with the recruiter? Now, I'm going to politely say, you got a phone, you noticed the emails came in, a quick response that would have said, my grandmother passed away, I'll be in touch next week, would have been a smart thing to do. But you didn't do it. Here's what you do. You got an email, respond to the email. You can call them and tell them, I'm sorry I was unavailable. My grandmother passed away. I was traveling. And I'm back now. And if you're still interviewing, I'd appreciate if we could schedule a time for the interview. You make it that simple. I personally would encourage a phone call, but most people don't get through on the phone these days. Leaving a voicemail where they can hear your voice and hear your sincerity is better than an email. You can follow up the next day with an email if they don't get in touch. And the email then would read, the subject line would say something to the effect of, I left a voicemail for you yesterday. And the body would read, I left a voicemail for you saying the reason I didn't respond last week was my grandmother passed away. We were dealing with the funeral. And frankly, it was upsetting to my family and to me. So if you're still interviewing, I'd like to be considered. Could we make arrangements for the next step? That's sort of a message people will get. If they are still interviewing, they will include you. Why is it becoming so common for software engineers and data scientists to refuse to do and present a free project to a potential employer as a condition of being hired? Well, I will tell you this exists in a lot of fields, not just simply in software, but I worked in technology search for a lot of years, and it's clearly been a part of that life too. The reason is too many firms abuse the process. And I say abuse the process because they went for free consulting. They wanted someone to write a report, do a study, do something that related to work that was going on in their office. And thus, people took a look at this and went, what the heck are they doing? They want me to do this work. It relates to a project that they've been working on. I'm not going to do free consulting for them. Forget it. And I don't blame them. You're stealing time from them and not paying them for it. They've got family, they've got a life, they've got a job to do, and you're trying to get them to do free consulting for them. Don't pull that kind of crap. Now, if this is if this is something that is legitimate, that's a test, pay them something for it. Say we're going to pay you something modest for your time, but what you can do, I would appreciate if what you did was this small project that we have, small, an hour of time tops, not something that's going to take hours and days and a weekend. That's cruelty on your part. That's why people refuse to do it. You're stealing from them. So if you're going to make them do work like that, pay them for it, and then from there, be respectful of them, and ask them, uh, explain to them why you want it done. But you ask the reason why people don't want to do it. I think I gave you some pretty clear answers as to why. Okay. Should you reply to personal questions asked by a recruiter you just met? I bet you a woman asked this question because this is the nonsense that a lot of women deal with. So, you married? And, got any kids? Now, in the U.S., these are illegal questions. But I would politely respond to this recruiter, by saying, how does this relate to my qualifications for the role? I've been on too many interviews where after someone asked me similar questions to this, I got hit on. I'm sure that's not your intention, but understand I want to keep this on a purely professional level right now so that there's no risk of that occurring. So in 3 sentences, you explained why it is you're not going to respond to personal questions. I'm sure that's not your intention, but in the past, I've been hit on, causes them to back away. Don't answer personal questions. It's nonsense. What is the best way to hire a recruitment agency? Now, this could be asked by a job hunter or an employer, but the probability is it's a job hunter. So I'm going to answer that one first. And the answer is you don't hire a recruitment agency. They are being paid tens of thousands of dollars by a company to find someone to work for them. Are you going to pay them tens of thousands of dollars? Of course not. But that's what you think. You think you hire recruiters to find you a job, and you don't. What you do is help fill a position for them for which they're going to be paid by an employer. Now, from an employer standpoint, how do you hire a good recruiting firm? Well, speak with your HR organization. Ask them about the vendors that they work with, the search firms that they work with, where they believe they're capable. In addition, you can speak with people on your staff or with colleagues at your level about what you need in the way of a recruiting firm and see who they recommend, who they've had positive experiences with. I used to do recruiting, did it for a long time. I'm not here soliciting search business. I don't do that work anymore. I'm a coach who helps people with job search, hiring, management, leadership, different workplace issues. So I'm not in that business anymore. I've been out of it for 5 years. So from your vantage point, get recommendations from people who've had successful experiences. Interview them so that you can come to your own decision, because you may be, they may say, contact someone with such and such firm. Who do I speak with? I use so-and-so. Great. This could be the most junior person in the office, and they had a senior who backed them up and taught them what to do and say. You want to evaluate the person they recommend and come to your own decision. Get recommendations. That's going to be the smart way to do it. How can I loved this question when I read it. How can a leader work on the fixed mindset of team members who stick with old methods and see failure as the limit of their abilities? I'm going to translate this to, I've got people who are afraid of making a mistake. So they'd stick with the tried and true way of doing things. And I think the first thing is to meet with individuals. I know there's more than one, but meet with them and simply say, I know you can do more than what you're giving me, but I have the idea that you've gotten comfortable doing what you're doing, how you do it. And the problem with that is I need more from you. So we're working on such and such. I need more of an effort. Now, I want to be clear. I understand that this is new terrain for you. You haven't done this before, and you may be a little uncomfortable with it, if not downright afraid. So, what I want from you to know, I want for you to know is, if you make mistakes, I'm going to help you learn from it. I'm not going to punish you. I'm not going to fire you. I'm not going to be critical of you. I want you learning as you go along here. Ask me questions. I'll make time to talk with you, but I need you to be more fearless, going out there and giving me more than the same thing you've always done in the same way you've always done it. I need you to come to life again. And that'll get their attention. They'll ask you questions, but you have to back that up, because they've been trained to be afraid of making a mistake. You have to make them unafraid of doing that. What is the best thing to do when you first start networking? Other than being friendly and collegial, one thing to do is to track your activity, who you spoke with about what, so that you're not starting fresh every time. Don't rely upon your memory for everything. Write it down systemically, whether it's your phone, your iPad, and your laptop, with software that operates between platforms. For example, I use OneNote. On my laptop, I also use it on my phone. I'm able to access data that way. There's a million pieces of software that can do that. You can use Evernote. You can use any number of things. But the idea is you track the conversations. Be available for other people so that when they need help, you're available for them and you provide useful help, and thus develop a relationship with people so that they don't think it's a one-way street with you asking something from them and they can't ask something of you. So that's really how to start, is track activity, be friendly and collegial, make sure that they understand they can come to you for advice, introductions, whatever. I'm going to pause here for a second because I've been talking nonstop for more than a half hour. If you've got a question for me, put it into chat. In the future, if you have a question, you can also email it to me in advance at thebiggamehunter@gmail.com. And in the subject line, put the phrase office hours. So this way I know what it's about. Okay. Let's go to the next question. I decide to return to school after this COVID crisis and pursue a career change. Should I do X-ray technician, which is practical and sound, or finish my master's in social work where my gut has been leaning for years? What should I do? I don't know, but you have some cost in social work, and you obviously have an interest in that. And within social work, there are subsets. So I speak as an MSW. I am someone with a master's in social work. There are subsets within social work that you can find agency work upon graduation with your undergrad and get to work. You're not going to become wealthy during doing that. You didn't go into social work to become wealthy. There's career paths in becoming a therapist. You'll need more training. Oh, I'm sorry. You're speaking about a master's in social work. You can learn basics that would allow you to be a therapist in private practice, do administrative work in agencies. There's a lot that you can learn that pays better than just simply being a caseworker. So no issue with that. X-ray tech, I don't know what the dollars are for that, how much you can earn, but you've got to make a decision. And in your gut, I believe you know what the right thing is to do. Now, just do it. 2 more questions. What are my chances for an interview if the hiring manager passes my resume to HR? If they're being truthful that they passed your resume to HR, your chances are pretty good. Terry, hi, nice to see you. Your chances are pretty good. And I'm going to let you in a secret. They sometimes lie. They say, I'm going to pass your resume on to HR because they want to get you off the phone, get this done, and they're lying to you. So you may never hear from them again. If they're being honest, you have a good chance of getting interviewed. So don't sweat it. You'll find out soon enough, but there are no guarantees. And I didn't hear people's voices, so I don't know if this person lied to you. Last question for now. I'm currently a mental health worker who wants to expand my knowledge. I graduated with a 2.49 and GPA. During college, I was dealing with depression and grief. Do you think I'll be able to earn my MSW and get accepted into grad school for social work? Yes. Here's why I say that. I'll speak for myself. My index for my undergrad was not much different than yours. I think it was a little bit higher, but I think it was in the high 2s. And 30 years after graduation, I decided I wanted to go for an MSW. So I followed the process. I was accepted at Fordham University. And what I discovered there was a lot of people who really weren't that smart and weren't really that knowledgeable. And I was stunned to see that a school would accept people who were that dumb. What I'll say to you is there are harder schools and easier schools to get into. You know, the harder schools may be reluctant, but you can talk with them in your application about how at the undergrad level you were dealing with depression, grief, whatever other issues there were, and how you have it under control now, and this is your dream. You want to be an MSW, do whatever it is you want to do with that. Also, I discovered while I was in school that they were getting paid. And by that, I mean all these people who are not particularly bright, who are occupying real estate in the classrooms, who weren't doing their work and were winding up with B's, which in my school, that could have been an F. Everyone was getting A's if you did the work, but these folks weren't. They came with a scholarship to the school, or they came with paid tuition from their employer. The university was getting paid. They like being paid. It wasn't so much about the student, it's the fact that the student came with a paid ticket. So if you have a paid ticket, you're more likely to get accepted. In terms of what was going on for you, and I have no idea how long ago this was, remember, you can always explain it to them. If they want to speak to you in person, you offer that up to them so they can hear your voice and believe you. There's lots of things, but I wouldn't worry about that. I would focus on doing great work, putting an application in, being at your best, so that if they do want to talk with you, you can show up big. So that's today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did and you're watching on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook, give it a thumbs up. Share it. Do something that lets people know it was worthwhile. And in addition, I'll mention to you, I'd love to help you. Visit my website, thebiggamehunter.us. You can schedule time for coaching, a discovery call. You can search the blog there for information that'll help you. I've got thousands of posts there that you can watch, listen to, or read that will help. Also, you can find out about my courses. Courses cover a lot of things. I have a new one coming out shortly about mistakes people make in salary negotiations. The course after that is going to be about salary negotiation and offer you a few tactics for that. But the first one out is going to be about mistakes, and that should be live within the next 2 weeks. Also want to say, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/IN/the big game hunter. Mention that you saw the live because I've been talking for more than 40 minutes now. And my network is going to be bigger than a lot of yours. So connect with me there. Your network will grow a lot. And hope you had a terrific day. I'll see you Friday. Again, send me questions in advance at thebiggamehunter@gmail.com. And in the subject line, put the phrase office hours. This way I know what it's about. Have a terrific day and be great.